Hey, Mike, last week, Coach Harson kind of talked about, putting the offense together. And with both you guys, he really talked about blending things and sort of, putting in different concepts and really talking with the whole staff. What has that process been like, even going back to the spring, as far as, deciding what you guys wanted this offense to look like?
Yeah, it's been fun getting together with Coach Harson and the other guys on the staff. There's a lot of knowledge in the offensive staff room, and it's always a challenge when you go somewhere and you start new. But then you got your own challenges each and every year because each team's a little bit different. I think the biggest challenge for us right now is not what we want to do and what we believe in. I wouldn't be here and be with Coach Harson if we weren't aligned in a lot of ways offensively of the way we believe in attacking, playing attacking offense. I think the challenge arises for us is trying to still figure out who we are as the 2021 Auburn football team. What are our strengths, that we need to build upon, whether it's an individual's personal strength of what he does well, the strengths of each unit, and then what are our weaknesses? What are the things we need to improve on? Some things that we're not quite ready to go the next step with. So we've had 3 days of practice. We'll have day 4 tomorrow. So right now, we're throwing a lot at them, and while we're doing that, we're still trying to figure out who we are, and we're still in the process of, building an Auburn offense of what we want it to be. There's a lot of offense out there. There's a lot of different ways to do things. I think everybody in that room has done a lot of things offensively, schematically, but I think to be a good coach, you got to figure out what your players do and what they do well, and give them a chance to be successful.
Next question comes from Nathan King.
Hey, Mike. Like you said, it's only been a few days of practice, but what have you seen out of Tavares Dawson so far at wide receiver, and how important is his development moving forward, considering he's the only receiver in this class?
Well, I think it was a good sign for Auburn. He did sign in the second, but we recruited him when we got here. But he was committed to Auburn. I've known about him since when I got back in the league, and I was at the other school last year. We recruited him there. I talked to him on the phone, and what I liked about him was his ability to run. He has elite speed. Obviously, he has track times, but he's got game-changing speed that can create explosive plays off of his ability. Right now, you can see a guy's got speed. He's made some tough catches in practice. He's won some with his speed. Right now, it's learning what to do. He's got talent, and that's our job as coaches: figure out what he can do and put himself in position to be successful. But I like his attitude. He likes football. He likes to compete. And we had a conversation this morning, him and I, about what he needs to keep working on to improve, and that's focusing on what his coach tells him on a daily basis and not getting ahead of himself. Trying to improve as a receiver each and every day.
Next question is from Miguel.
Hi, Coach Mike. This is Miguel Tataje with the Soners Latin American Network. What has surprised you the most about working with Bo Nix?
What's impressed me the most is working with Bo Nix. That was the question, correct? Just his work ethic. I've been extremely impressed of how hard this young man works, whether it's in the weight room, whether it's running the decks this summer in the stadium, was how he prepares for each meeting. Coming in beforehand, I'll be in the offensive staff and I'll walk around the corner of my office and he's sitting in there constantly, watching film, getting ready for the meeting, preparing the questions that he asked. He leaves no stone unturned. So his work ethic, number one, and then he's an ultimate competitor. He wants to win in everything, not just football. Anything that we do that has competition, Bo Nix wants to win. So work ethic and competitor, and then the last one, being vulnerable. which I think is a good trait that, Bo and I have talked about being vulnerable, taking coaching. I know I understand I'm his third coach in 3 years in that quarterback room, but being vulnerable and listening to the way that we want to do things, the way Coach Harsin has it structured, and constantly trying to learn. So I've been impressed with Bo. He's hungry. He wants to win. He loves Auburn University, and I think all those things are important. And it's a guy that started 2 years here, but still being vulnerable and understanding that he still has a lot he has to work on. And I think that's a credit to him and how he was raised. And I'm excited to be here and Coach Bo Nix.
Question from Tom Green.
Hey, Mike, wanted to ask you about Demetrius Robertson and what he can bring to that wide receiving core. And also, did you have a pre-existing relationship from when he was in high school and you were at Georgia and they were recruiting him?
Yeah, I've known Demetrius for a long time. I went and saw him in high school, and it might have been after his 9th grade year, going into his 10th. I think we were one of the first to offer him at that time, but I remember going down in the spring. You couldn't have contact with him then at the school, but in Savannah and recruiting him when I was still there. And obviously I left and went on to Colorado State, but kept up his career when he went to Cal, and then saw he went back to Georgia. So we got on the phone and started talking with him and his brother. It wasn't like this was a long-standing relationship, but there had been introductions, there had been conversations in the past. So I think that always helps when each side knows a little bit about somebody and where they're from and what they're about. So I knew a little bit about where he was from, his family, his brother, his dynamic. He knew about me, so there was a little bit of a comfort level. Demetrius, he's an explosive athlete too. I was telling him last night, he's a lot bigger than when I saw him when he was probably a 158-pound freshman down at Savannah Country Day. I think that was his high school, the Country Day High School. He's weighing about close to 190 now. He looks good, but he was a guy that had explosive movements. He had short area quickness. He had elite long speed, and I think that's something that we need on this football team. We need speed, and the two receivers I've been asked about are guys that can run. This league they have big and they have big, strong, and fast people. And to add 2 guys that've got speed into this offense, we got to find a way to hopefully get them on the field, and they got to do their part of learning what we're trying to do and buying in to what we're trying to do as an Auburn offense. But excited about both of those. Excited Demetrius is here now. He's not going to walk on the field and tomorrow know everything or be in the best shape, but he's here, and we're going to work him to get ready where hopefully he can be a strong contributor for us this year offensively and in special teams. He was a very good special teams player at Georgia in all phases, which shows you a lot about the guy. His willingness to block, to play gunner, to do those things on special teams. At the other school, so I think it's a good addition for us.
We'll go to Bill Cameron.
Well, let's just stick with receivers then, because that was one of the areas that was talked about really needing to see some improvement. Have you seen improvement from the guys that are still back from the spring? And if so, who's stepped up and sort of taken leadership roles?
Yeah, and a lot of it was because of the youth in that room. It's youth in the room when we got here in the spring, and it's a brand new offense with new terminology. So a lot of it was, still trying to figure out what this formation means, what's my split, a lot of thinking for those guys. And you couldn't really see, who they were. They weren't being able to perform at probably their God-given ability because of how much thinking they were doing and a lot of still learning how to play receiver. I mean, you lost a lot of production off of last year's football team with Seth, Schwartz, and then Stove. Those 3 guys. I don't think anybody coming back in that room, had at least 10 catches. I don't know the exact numbers, but those guys were a large percentage of the passing offense. You know, and I told these guys the other day, meeting with the quarterbacks and receivers, you know, it's a credit to them of what they did after spring practice. You know, we weren't where we needed to be, I thought, coming out of spring practice in the passing game. And they worked extremely hard in what we call our player run practices this summer. They got in their playbook, and we're light years ahead of where we were when we finished spring. And that's a credit to those guys because, yes, we can have some meetings with them, what the NCAA allows and film review, but we can't go on the field. So they did a lot of that on their own, getting together. And now we're able to see, you know, they're not thinking about what a certain formation is or what a certain motion is or what we call this route. They're able to go out there and execute it, and then we can coach them up just on the route or how to attack coverage. So we're a long way from where we were in the spring. I told them I was proud of that the other day, but we're not where we need to be still to this point. But if they'll keep the same mindset and take coaching, you know, kids always want to, what I got to do, coach, to improve, what I got to do to improve. And I'm like, it's in your meeting every day. We're telling you every day in your meeting, your coaches are telling you, take coaching. It's not criticism, it's coaching. Take it to heart, whether I'm talking to, or your position coaches is talking to the next receiver in line, still listen and take coaching and go out and get better. But I think Coach Cornelius Williams has done a good job, you know, developing a relationship with those guys so you have trust, which I think is important, and those guys are working hard. And then we got some competition in that room. You've got Shed Jackson, who missed spring practice. You've got Capers, who wasn't here in the spring. Dawson is here now. And then Demetrius will be practicing soon. So now you've got more guys in the room. There's more competition. And competition, I think it's the best thing you can have. You know, it makes guys more alert and aware every day. They go out and work extremely hard. And coaches about competition, and so am I. So it's good to see that competition out there this fall camp.
Question from Bennett Durando.
Mike, with Bo, where do you think he is right now with the new offense? What's going to be the biggest challenge for him for the rest of fall camp in terms of getting meshed in with this?
Well, I think if we went in there and we got on the chalkboard and, you know, draw this up, draw that up, talk to me about this. I think he can draw it up and he can talk about it. But there's so many little nuances and details of, you know, why you call a certain play, what we're trying to attack, the little things that go in it. And to me, with Bo, it's doing the little things over and over. And I'm talking about fundamentally. He had a really good day on day 3, and I thought he was sharp. I thought he was fundamentally sound. He was on balance in the pocket. And when he threw and he finished on balance, and that's a lot of what we've been talking about, you know, with him, about being on balance, getting your feet in the ground, making, you know, you're going to be more consistent, you know, throwing the ball. He still had a couple plays where he scrambled, he had a run where he had an excellent run, and we don't want to take that away from Bo Nix because that's something that, you know, scares the crap out of defensive coordinators, and that the ability of a quarterback to take the ball down and run, but just becoming a more consistent passer. And to me, that's with his fundamentals that we talk about every day, and that goes back to him being vulnerable and taking coaching and not having all the right answer, not having all the answers, and listening. So I'm proud of that. So the number one thing for me is, you know, you never get away from talking fundamentals. You've never arrived at that point. You're always looking at your fundamentals of each play, your drop, where your eyes are, how you set your hips, all those little things that we talk about. The scheme, you know, scheme's a scheme, but, you know, doing the fundamental over and over is the main thing with him, and I like where he's at. We've got a long way to go. There's a lot of improvement to be made, but he's made a lot of improvement the short time that we've been here.
Let's go to Justin Hokanson.
Hey, Coach. We talked to Tank Bigsby, and he talked about doing more downhill running this fall, you know, compared to what they've done in the past. What does that mean to you? I mean, what's your perspective on downhill running when he says that? What does that mean in your offense?
Well, I think, you know, when you hear the word, you know, downhill, you know, run game, and that's something that we preach to our guys. Everybody thinks, hey, you're lined up in the, the I formation, and you're just running, straight downhill. I think it's a physical attitude. It's not just the running back, but it's the offensive line, it's the tight end, it's the receivers that, I believe that you have to be able to run the ball to get where you want to go, and that's ultimately to win a championship and be able to run the ball, late in football games, when they know you've got to run the ball, and that's a mentality. Downhill physical run game to me is a mentality. Are we going to have plays that run on the perimeter? Yes. Are we going to have plays that run in between the tackles? Yes. But it's a mentality of your running backs, and when a running back has a mentality that, sometimes at some point I got to get downhill and get behind my pads and get the dirty 2, 3, 4 yards, and I'm jumping my tail back up and I'm getting in the huddle, but I'm finishing runs. I'm downhill when I finish a run. That excites everybody on the offense. That makes those offensive line and tight ends want to block for that. Those backs, those receivers want to block because he might break one, and we're downhill. We're downfield blocking, and that leads to excitement. To me, it's a mindset that we're going to be physical in the run game, and it's not necessarily we're going to run between the A gaps every snap. It's just a mentality of how we're going to play at all the positions offensively.
Let's go to Jason Caldwell.
Mike, you mentioned speed when talking about wide receivers. Malcolm Johnson was a guy that was an early graduate, a year early last year, and kind of almost a missed year for him. How much have you seen progression wise from him from the spring to now?
Good question. Malcolm's another guy that I got to know when I was at the other school at South Carolina. We recruited him, talked to him on the phone a number of times, and with the COVID, you never got to see him in person. But he's a guy that had had really good speed, elite speed. He's learning to play the receiver position, and raw is not a bad word. When I say he's raw, I mean that's not a bad word. That means he has a high ceiling, in my opinion. He has the physical characteristics. He has the size. All right, he has the speed. He's got those things, but he is raw at learning how to play the position. This young man has a really good attitude. He doesn't mind working extremely hard. We're able to see some of his physical tools now because he understands a little bit of more of what we're doing coming out of spring, and that's a credit to him. But he's a guy that I think will continue to improve, throughout this camp, throughout this year, throughout his career here at Auburn. And he'll continue to work. I think he'll be a guy that will make a lot of plays for us.
We've got 3 more questions in the chat from people who haven't asked yet, so we'll finish up with those, and we'll go to Philip Marshall. Philip?
Jason's still up.
Philip? Okay, we'll go on to Mark Murphy, and we'll come back to Philip.
Yeah, Coach, could you talk about big picture for preseason camp, what you'd like to get accomplished as far as goals before you start game planning for Akron?
Yeah, camp is a little shorter for us because school starts a week from today. But the big picture of it is that you're trying to get the bulk of your offense that you feel like this group can handle in fall camp, what Coach Harsin calls the DNA, the bones of who we are. And then you're trying to identify, your playmakers at the skill positions. You're trying to identify who your best 5 are up front. You're trying to identify depth at every position. So you're and then you're building on fundamentals of playing the game. So there's a lot of things that are at work these first 10 days of fall camp. You're trying to build toughness. You're trying to learn, teach them to strain and thrive in practice and not just survive. So there's a lot of things you're working on, and ultimately after camp, you want to say, okay, here's who we think we are offensively, You know, we've got an identity of what we want to be, downhill physical. How are we going to be downhill physical? Is it 12 personnel? Is it 11 personnel? Is it this formation? Is that formation? It was these guys. You know, we want to be explosive in the passing game. Well, how are we going to be explosive? There's a lot of ways to be explosive. We want to have, you know, we want to, you know, do a lot of our stuff that we do, but, you know, how can we do it and who do we want to do it with? So you want to figure that out in camp. Who are guys that are going to, you know, coming out of camp, we feel like these guys can provide depth, so we got to continue to work them. You know, you're looking for guys before you start game planning that these are the core group of guys that you're about to start working towards your game plan with Akron, and then those other guys, you got to find a way to keep developing them to get them. Hopefully, I mean, you never know when it's going to happen. It could have a game 2. I've had guys that we thought were going to redshirt in the past end up coming, you know, playing for you game 5, game 6. Find your core guys, who you're going to be, how you're going to do it, and that you know, you got a base idea, and then that constantly, you know, might change a little bit throughout the year, but you're pretty set on what your identity is offensively. And I don't think you can, you know, you can't try to, you know, fit a square into a round hole. You know, you got your identity is formed of who your teams are and what they can do best. You know, you can't be stubborn and say, hey, we're going to do this because, you know, this is what we do. We got to do what our guys can do. And when you do that, you give them more confidence when they step on the field. So we're trying to still figure that all out right now.
We'll give Philip Marshall another try. Thinks it's fixed. Maybe. Can't get you. No. You can, if you want to type your question in the chat, we can ask it from here, and we'll go to Brian Matthews while we're waiting.
Hi, Mike. I couldn't let you get out of here without asking about the offensive tackle position. Who's competing at left and right tackle for you right now, and have you seen improvement in the pass pro?
Well, we got a number of guys that are working at tackle. You know, we got Berdarius Ham, we've got Coffee, we've got Troxel, we got Zaire. Council has worked some at tackle. You know, and to be honest, we just put the shoulder pads on day 3. You know, we're running around in our underwear days 1 and 2, and you know, everybody looks good in their underwear, and you can't really block the guys you want to when you don't have pads on. So I thought, you know, they're competing, they're working hard. You know, that's the process that we're trying to figure out. We're trying to get our offense in and move them around in positions, and then, you know, as we get closer to Saturday as our first scrimmage, then we'll go out there and let them play and compete where it won't be so much structured like there is in practice, and see how guys go, and then we'll grade them, and you know, we'll talk about it, and we'll come back and we'll see who we want to put who where going into that second week, and then, you know, after that second scrimmage, you know, we'll figure out who fits in what position. But you know, those are some of the guys that are working there right now. I don't think I missed one. Colby Smith's a young freshman that has size. Langlow's worked some at tackle too. So we worked a number of guys there. I don't think it's fair to say, hey, this guy's ahead of this guy right now. You know, we're just getting started really in the nuts and bolts of, you know, them having to block people with pads on and then allowing them to have pads.
And Philip has typed in his question. How do you get from the first day on the job to the first day of the season, and what are the main challenges?
I'd say getting everybody on the same page, and that's a big challenge. You know, mine's not as tough as the head coach because he's got the whole team, support staff, and everybody. I'm dealing with the offense, and when I say the same page, that goes for. And a lot of times, same page means same language. I might be sitting in a meeting room and, you know, what Coach Friend and I called a certain type of block or a drill. Coach Bedell might have said something different. Coach Cadillac, they called it this last year. You get a player, they got different. It's getting everybody speaking the same language, because if you're not speaking the same language, things get lost in translation. We might all admit the same thing. But if I still speak my language and this coach over here speaks his language, and you know, the players from last year, oh, this was what we called it last year, and still communicate that way, things get lost. So getting everybody on the same page, speaking the same language, I think offensively is big for us. And then, you know, getting the trust factor, the buy-in. I always say this, there's a trust between coach and player because player wants to play. So yes, sir, yes, coach, you know, but we want that true trust where, you know, they know who we are other than coach, you know. It's been tough with, you know, COVID going on and COVID restrictions, and now we're back in some COVID protocols, and, you know, I think but coach has done a good job of allowing us time with our players, getting to know them getting to know us outside being a football coach, and that's when you develop the trust. So, you know, speaking the same language and then building trust, which is not going to be an overnight thing. That happens over time. You know, the more work together, the more meals you share together, the more time you share together, the more you get to know somebody is the way you build trust. You know, yes, we're the coach and they're the player, but I don't think it works just in that capacity. There's got to be more to that relationship than that.
Okay. Coach, thank you very much.
All right, guys, thank you.